Welcome to A Married Perspective. I'm Judge Derwin Webb, coming to you from the Fraser History Museum with my special guest today, a man who needs no introduction. Before I get started, before I introduce you, I went through research and I saw all these things from CNN, MSNBC. Man, I'm just so happy to have my man, Representative Charles Booker, on this show today. Man, welcome to the show.
Thank you, brother. It's good to be with you, Judge.
Man, you've been doing a lot. Tell me what you've been doing today.
Trying to keep up with myself. Things did not stop with the primary election. If anything, they sped up because there was so much energy and excitement. And, I was like, well, what do? We got to keep this work going. And so today we actually just launched.
Wait a minute. Do we have breaking news here?
Oh, we're breaking it with you.
Okay.
Now,
Tell me what we're doing.
I had to bring it to you. This is the first interview since we've actually launched this incredible initiative. From the campaign, a theme grew, and it started as a phrase of me connecting the West End, communities like the West End, to rural parts of Kentucky, like in Appalachia, and saying that we're all in this together. And so I would say from the hood to the holler, we're fighting the same battles. We got to come together to win our future. And we started chanting from the hood to the holler. And it became something that so much bigger and really swept the Commonwealth and in a lot of ways the nation. And we're continuing that work with an organization today that I launched called From the Hood to the Holler. And this is going to be our way to get more people involved in politics, break down the barriers that keep communities divided, and really flip the Southern strategy on its ear. We want to bring folks back together across those barriers of structural racism so that we can leverage new political power. So Hood to the Holler is our way to carry that message across Kentucky and across the country. And it's sending shockwaves right now, and I'm excited to break it here with you.
Man, I appreciate it a lot. Let me tell you this. I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. You know that. We've been knowing each other for a long time, but people don't know how you really got started. But before we get to that, I was doing my research and looking back, October 23rd, 2019. I'll never forget that day. I met you over at Starbucks, yep. And we had a conversation. You wanted to give me some news, some things you were thinking about. You told me that you were going to run. Tell me about that day.
Yeah, well, it was a couple days after my birthday, and you are someone that I've admired for a long time, and I tell you that every time I talk to you. And when I had this thought that I was going to do something big, I wanted to pick your brain and just get your insight. You are a leader in our community, and you've been down these trails before, and I just wanted to get your ear on it. And, I had the idea back in February of last year, and I sort of ran away from it, because I'm in the State House. I'm doing some, great work. We're getting some things done, and it's my first term, and you don't typically look to run for another office when you'd probably be unopposed in your reelection.
Right.
And but I'm driven by my faith, and I'm not here for titles. I want to do the work that's called for me, and this fell in my spirit. And when it started building up momentum, I wanted to bring it to folks like you to say, here's what I'm thinking. Tell me that you don't think I'm crazy, and here's how I think we can carry this off. And so, we got to sit down, and I got to pour out with you, and you gave me some insight and some encouragement, and here we are today. And I want to thank you for your example and for hearing me out as a young guy that, we got to find people to look to, that have been down the road before, and you've done that for me and so many other people, so I appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate you saying that. But if you think about it, you are who I want to be, or who I wanted to be. Think about this. You went to the University of Louisville. You went to law school, graduated from law school. You made the bad choice of going into a certain fraternity, but we're not going to talk about that.
Don't hold it against me.
But you have been in politics basically since you got out of school. What got you involved in politics?
Man, I stumbled into it. And actually, in undergrad is when I first began to think about politics as an arena I should even be thinking about. I didn't know much about it. From the West End, our folks, we just trying to survive. We don't deal with politics because they don't deal with us, and it started for me when I was considering going to law school. I knew I wanted to seek out folks that had been in those spaces because, both my parents had dropped out of high school, and, I didn't have that infrastructure around me to say, here's what you do if you want to do something different. And they gave me a lot of prayer, a lot of support, love, but they didn't know the road ahead. So I sought out mentors, and it opened my eyes to the political arena, and mainly through Senator Derwin L. In order for me to meet with him, I had to ride with him to Frankfurt because he was so busy. I wanted to talk about him in his practice. In order to do that, though, I had to go to the Capitol. And I walk in the Capitol like, what is this place? And I'm in college.
Right.
And it really just snowballed. Like the light switch flipped on for me. And I just started digging around, learning more. Things I saw in the community that I was pissed off about, I started to connect them to policy. And then I'm like, wait a minute, okay, if this stuff ain't just happening, policies are shaping how these things happen, I need to be in there affecting those policies. I was preparing to, practice law and argue the law. But if the laws aren't just, am I really doing everything I can do? That was my personal, thought. And so I just started meddling, working my way into every level of government, just carrying coffee, taking notes, whatever I could do to get in the room so that I could understand what was happening. And it really just snowballed. And, I love thinking about my story, one, because I would have never thought. And I remember when I interned in D.C., I interned for Congressman Gregory Meeks out of New York, and it was during my second and third year law school. I was taught to be a hustler. Like, you got to find a way, and I know you understand. And so I talked my way into sleeping on somebody's floor in D.C. so that I could intern. I talked my way into this internship, too. And when I was up there, I was talking to some of the staff, and I was like, well, where I'm from, we don't see stuff like this. And I remember this one person, she's in leadership in Georgia now, so I ain't going to say her name on here because I didn't ask her. But she told me that she could see me run for office one day. And I was like, well, nah, where I'm from, you don't do stuff like that. And I never considered it to be a real thing. What let me know I needed to be in these spaces and that I could run and I deserved to was when my cousin started getting murdered. It started with TJ. It was Easter Sunday.
I hear you talk about TJ a lot.
Yeah, he really opened my eyes to like my urgency because I've been working in these spaces. I was seeing stuff and part of projects. I worked in Metro Council with Councilman Tandy. I worked in the mayor's office, worked for LRC, was a director of Fish and Wildlife. I saw all this stuff, and then the question was like, well, I can see how we can do things better. If I don't do everything I can, I'm a part of the problem that I'm complaining about. So I decided to start running, and now I have two girls. Those are my bosses, Kaylin and Preston, and Press is my 4-year-old. And when she was coming into the world, I was like, I need to do something different. Because I want to make sure I don't pass down the same struggle my grandparents gave to my parents, and that my parents fought like hell to not have to give to me, but still did. And that's really my story. And I campaigned on that. Running for U.S. Senate, run for State House. That is my message. That no matter where you come from, what you look like, how much money you have, what pronoun you use, if you're from the wrong side of the tracks or not, or whatever people say, that you matter, that you are important, your voice is critical, and because of your lived experiences, you need to be where decisions are made so you can help affect the change you want to see. And, I'm just proud to be able to share my testimony and lean into that story.
Well, I'll tell you this, you talk a lot about the 43.
Yeah.
43rd District.
Yeah.
Proud of it.
Yeah.
Tell me what it's like growing up in that area.
Man, so I'm proud to be from the West End. Love my home. Everything that I learned about the world started, in Beecher Terrace, in Shawnee, Cotter Homes. So I got a really big family. So I'm one of about 70. I stopped at 71 grandkids. So it's a whole lot of us. We all from the West End, and I learned about love. Both my parents are ministers. I learned about faith, hard work. My granddad, after being a farmer, he served, started his construction business and had all of the grandsons helping him tear up carpet, put up drywall. So during the summers, we didn't get breaks when I was little. You know, we was helping to make sure we handed him the shingles and sat there while he was struggling to put the toilet in. I can say struggling now because he ain't here. We did a good job. It was all up to code. But, you know, just that upbringing really, it gave me a foundation that makes me believe that nothing's impossible. And to represent the area I grew up in, the place where all my family that's in Kentucky is from,
Right.
is deeply humbling. And the powerful part about representing the 43rd District is that it's not just the West End. So we're in it. So it cuts through downtown, Central Business District, then it goes east to Indian Hills. And so it pulls in a very diverse swath of the community, which is critical because it's gerrymandered. You know, we gotta deal with, that's a different conversation we gotta deal with, but it creates an opportunity to show that we're all in it together. And it gave me the chance to tell my story as a kid from the West End, but draw the similarities and the common bonds with folks that have a different quality of life, and so that we could fight together. And that really is the same message I leaned into for this Senate campaign. So I'm grateful for the privilege.
I know that no one gets anywhere by themselves. You know, we can always say we work hard, we do a lot of things, but a lot of people come along our way to help us get to where we need to be or where we want to be.
Yeah.
Who were some of your earliest influencers?
Yeah, you know, I talk about, you know, my mom. Everywhere I go, I say she's my shero. She is definitely, you know, superhuman in my eyes. And, you know, one of the stories I tell that I told on the campaign trail a lot is when I first realized what selfless love was about. And it was when I realized she was going without eating so that I could eat. And to see her sacrifice and never complain, you know, she dealt with some tough times, but she didn't let me see her sweat. Just a couple times I saw her break down. But to see what she did to take care of me just really gave me a sense of indebtedness to her, but also some conviction for how to serve and love others outside of yourself. And then my granddad, Sergeant Lindsey E. Hearn Sr., I think I lean on him the most now, even though he's gone. You know, because he was the guy that did all the hard work for this big old family, you know, and he fought for civil rights here in Louisville, fought to desegregate Reynolds back in the day, and taught me a lot about hard work. And then, you know, I mentioned Senator Neal, Senator Powers, Rep. Owens, got a lot of love for him.
Yeah.
You know, it's my frat too. I was working with him on restoration of voting rights, and you know, he was doing work on payday lending. And when I went into the House to succeed him, you know, I picked up that legislation for restoration, and it's actually a part of the organization I've launched today. And so I give a lot of credit to him. One last person I'll say nationally, John Lewis, Congressman John Lewis. I call myself a good troublemaker, and it was because I learned from his example of what it means to cause disruption for the betterment, you know, and we're seeing a whole lot of that now, you know, where folks are causing disruption or trying to cry out to change things, even in the streets. And how do we leverage that? What does that mean as we get to the structural issues of why injustice happens, why people struggle, why poverty is generational? And so having this mindset of getting into these spaces where very few people look like me and saying that I'm going to be a voice to speak out against structural racism and shake up this status quo, you know, it was a lot of it I saw in him. So those are just a few people.
Well, I got a chance to look at some of your social media accounts. Instagram, 87,000 followers. Facebook, 67,000 followers. Twitter, 277,000 followers. You're not just local, Charles, you're nationally known. So I guess a question I have for you, who are some of the people that have reached out to you nationally during your race and are still talking to you now about what comes next?
Yeah, so two people, it's funny that I mentioned these two. So actually, we were texting today and I owe her a call back. It's Senator Elizabeth Warren. She reached out to me, of course, Senator Sanders and several others have. The story that she shared with me that is really powerful, even in the hood to the holler, is how you show up in places where you typically don't see folks, or they say don't go there. Especially in our current political environment where, people are in their corners, they don't listen to one another. And if you're a Democrat, you don't go here. If you're black, you definitely don't go here. And, part of my focus was I'm going. The places you say I shouldn't go or that we don't go is where I'm going, because how else will things change? And she was sharing with me how she went through a similar journey in her run for office, and it really meant a lot to me. And the other person that I'm just so inspired to be connected to is Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley.
Okay.
She's been pouring out a lot of love that I'm grateful for. And, to see her be vulnerable on the national stage and deal with her health issues has helped me. I'm a type 1 diabetic, and I've told my story in a lot of places where I never thought I'd be sharing this type of stuff. And I know it's powerful and I know it's important. And seeing someone be vulnerable, on a stage as big as her has helped me do that. And they've both been encouragements to me. And we've built a really big network. One that I'm excited about is Tracy Ellis Ross. So I got connected to her and several other high-profile celebrities that were interested in what we were doing in Kentucky. They're like, what are y'all up to there? And they see me marching in the streets and and building coalitions in parts of Kentucky that you would never expect. And they got excited and really helped to raise awareness about the election process, and also the fact that there is a young black guy that should be considered in Kentucky. And so we got a really big network now that I intend to leverage and stay close to, so we can bring all hands on deck, because we still got to get rid of Mitch McConnell. Regardless of what your party is, that's not even a partisan statement anymore. But then beyond that, there's a lot of struggle that we face in Kentucky and communities like ours across the country. And so we need all hands on deck to address them.
Well, I tell you this, I lost a couple of elections, and the one thing that I hated was hearing someone after it was over saying, I voted for you. That's probably one thing that you hate to hear, because you want to win, you want to keep going.
Yeah.
I guess my question to you is, what did you learn along the way? Anything you would have done differently, or how do you feel after everything is over now?
I've been asked that a couple times, and you know what? I wouldn't change a thing. We left it all on the field, and we were working before people gave us any shot. When nobody was looking, we were building infrastructure. We had hundreds of volunteers, and it was funny early on, because it's like, if you only knew what we were up to, we had the shot that everybody realized on election day. That didn't surprise us. Now, the way that things transpired, the pandemic, the height of racial tension, you never would have thought all of that would have been the case, but we were ready. We were ready to lead. We believed, I believed, and so I wouldn't change a thing. I think the one thing that I did learn is just how hungry people are for something dramatically different, and that it's not even partisan. There are a lot of folks that said they voted for Trump that were fired up to vote for me. And a lot of it was because they believed I would fight for them and that I saw them. And that was a really powerful lesson that I think we can take in our politics more broadly, so that we can engage places that have been abandoned and forgotten. I think we can shift our politics, which is why I'm launching this organization.
Right. What's the greatest lesson you learned during this campaign?
Keep being myself. Yeah, I think.
And let me interrupt you for a second.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You are, because to be honest with you, I didn't know if I would have the opportunity to interview you. I was hoping I would, but you reached right back out, and so the Charles that you see on TV is the Charles that you actually are. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. Just the value of me as a candidate, the value of me as an elected official, and someone that is in leadership, is that I be authentic to who I am and why I show up. And I realize how refreshing it is, because we don't see it a whole lot in politics. And honestly, I know why you don't see it in politics. I cried a whole lot on the House floor. And what I realized quickly is that once I was done crying out, they were gonna move on to the next thing, like it didn't even matter. And you pour your heart out, they're gonna step on it, and which is why a lot of people in politics don't do it. But it's also why a lot of folks in the community feel disconnected from it, because they're like, well, they don't see themselves in it, you know. And I've just reminded myself all the way through that just keep shining your light. Do what I can do. I don't have to try to figure it out. I don't have to try to be special. Just be me. And yeah, it's made a profound impact, and I'm aware of that.
Well, you're 35 years old, and you have done a lot in politics and in life. What do you think is your biggest accomplishment as a politician?
Oh, man.
Or is there a story that kind of resonates? I got into politics for this. This is how I know I'm a politician.
Yeah. So one of the most transformative stories that I'll tell my grandkids about, if I'm fortunate to be around, is House Bill 64, which is for folks that I'm type 1 diabetic. If you run out of insulin, you run out of your life-saving prescription, you can get a refill from your pharmacy if you can't get a hold of your physician. And which actually happened to me. It was a Thanksgiving holiday that I ran out over Thanksgiving, which is like the worst time to not have your insulin, because you know that's when all the best food is made. And the gentleman that I sit beside in the state house is from Greenup, Representative Danny Bentley. And you know our politics are very different, but that's my brother. And I shared my story with him. He shared his with me, and we were like, wait a minute, we're fighting the same thing, because he's a type 1 too. So we worked together on that bill. And it was just really powerful for me when the bill passed and we hugged each other in the house. And it didn't matter what our politics were. It didn't matter that he wasn't from the hood, I wasn't from East Kentucky. We were together, and we were fighting that fight. And I found a sense of hope that this is the good stuff that you can have in politics. Like if this is what it can feel like to work together to get stuff done. And so I know it exists. So that's been really powerful for me. The other one was, man, I had so many. Restoration of voting rights, getting a hearing in the House, and being able to speak about black codes and talk to this room of white folks, which I love, about structural racism, and to not back down from those challenges. And every time I got the chance to speak up and to inform, I even did it this week, talking about Jefferson Davis, and look them in the eyes and tell them about my ancestors who were enslaved in Kentucky, and tell them about the ills of racism that deny people that look like us of our humanity in a lot of cases, and how poverty is criminalized, and how we ignore a lot of people when we're thinking we're doing good. That means a lot to me, because I feel like I'm honoring my ancestors when I do it. So that was sort of a longer story, but the first one was definitely one that means a lot. I can tell my grandkids about.
Well, we are in the middle of a pandemic. There's an economic crisis going on as well. We have a movement, a racial injustice movement that's going on. What is your biggest fear for our country going forward?
I think my biggest fear would be that the institutions, those that control the current levers of power, will continue to ignore people that are crying out. That's a fear, because folks aren't going to be quiet anymore. They're not going back. They're not going to just go home, because they know their door can get kicked in and they be killed in their home. And so they're going to keep showing up. And this is not the 60s. There aren't as clear of lines of organization and leadership. And so folks are more organically rising up, which is a powerful thing, but it can also create a whole lot of new issues and challenges, especially when, you know, those in leadership are not being responsive. Which is sort of what I see here in Louisville, with where I can tell that the administration is trying to figure out the best way to engage. And I'm saying that, giving credit for trying to, in good faith, engage. But there have been some gaps there, and people still really feel ignored. And so that's a concern I have nationally, is that we can't do that. And I hope this organization can be a way of helping to answer that and equip folks on, this is how you organize. This is how, when you have a concern, you want to see something change your community, this is how you build collective power. This is how you become a citizen lobbyist, so that you can know the channels to push on, so you don't just have to yell in the street, which I'm yelling in the street too, but then I'm also going into the room where the decisions are made. So that's a concern. We can't miss this opportunity to build, because folks want it.
Okay, I'm going to shift the conversation just a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you some questions, thought-provoking questions. Give me your first ideas or first thoughts about what I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
Black Lives Matter movement.
Absolutely. I don't know if it's a rapid fire moment.
Well, it's kind of rapid fire, but tell me a little bit about it.
So first of all, my spiritual response is, of course. And I think the very clear-eyed response is, we have to have this distinction, and we have to lean into it, because our policies and our budgetary decisions don't reinforce that. They don't. And this is not an affront to anybody else's life. This is a matter of acknowledging everybody else's life and saying that we want to be treated like human beings too. And so, people have tried to label me as like the protest candidate, like the Black Lives Matter candidate. First of all, I'm a black man and my life matters. But secondly, it's understanding that the call for Black Lives Matter is not just so that black people can be treated like human beings. It's so that we can create a more just society, which is going to benefit everybody. So we need it.
Equality.
Equity. That's my gut response there. I have actually shifted how I talk about issues of equality. We need it, but that can't be where we stop. Like, we got to level the playing field, but then we also got to make sure that we address the harms that have been faced on various communities too. So for instance, in public education, I say now we need to fully and equitably fund public education, because just leveling the playing field doesn't account for communities that have been underserved for generations.
Right.
So.
Louisville.
Home in Card Nation. Proud, frustrated, in love. I think this is like the perfect example of, like, when you're in love with someone or something, you take on the challenges, you stand up for them. So nobody's gonna disrespect my home.
Right.
But I'm gonna call out the things that I want to see improved. And like, everything good I know about the world came from here. And everything that is like really pissed me off started from here too. But I love this place, and I'm proud to represent it.
Fatherhood.
Saved my life, man. Saved my life.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, man. My girls are the best thing to happen to me, without question. Kaylin was born on the tail end of my first year of law school, and I was like, oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? It's a grueling situation that I got to be focused on, and I brought a life into the world, and but she did for me more than I can ever repay, and she helped me grow up. But she also taught me about that love that I saw from my mom. It's like, oh, that's what that is. That's what it feels like.
Right.
Because I do the same thing for her, and so. During the campaign, I had one of the moments that I would cherish is being able to look at my daughters and tell them how I want to make them proud. And I wanted them to see me pursue my dreams so that they can know they can do it too, and that I'm fighting for the issues I'm fighting for so that they can have a better opportunity. And they allow me to continue with my dance moves. Because I used to be smooth, man. I'm a Kappa. I used to have it. It's all dad moves now, but they love me anyhow, man.
I have mentioned earlier that you're not local, you're national. I've been in Louisville for 25 years or so and been involved with politics and enjoy politics. This is the first year that I've ever had people contact me asking about our election, but more specifically asking about you. So I have a good group of people out there, so I just let people know who's going to be on the show here and there. This is the first time anyone has ever sent me questions to ask someone. So I have a few questions that people have sent to me to ask you.
Okay.
Christine Miller from Louisville says, it's clear you have a strong bipartisan following. What would you say to your supporters who plan to write you in on the November ballot?
I would say I'm humbled, but I would encourage them to consider voting for the Democratic nominee as opposed to writing my name in. One reason being is in Kentucky, there is provision in place that if you were in the primary and you weren't successful, you would not actually qualify for the general. So if you write my name in, it wouldn't be counted. And we have an opportunity here to get rid of Mitch McConnell, so we need to do it. And I reached out to Amy McGrath right after the election, told her that I want to figure out ways we can work together, and I want to see if I can help you make some adjustments, because there need to be some adjustments made. And I hope they take me up on that. Talks are ongoing there, but we got to get rid of Mitch. And so there'll be other opportunities to support me, and they can connect with Hood to the Holler right now.
Okay.
And help me there too.
Dorian Martindale from Atlanta, Georgia writes, if you have school-aged children, will you be sending them back to school in the fall?
As of right now, no. And as of right now, none of them will be. I think they're seeing now as the trend continues to sort of tick up, and there's not a very clear plan in place for not only the students but the faculty. So I know the delay is already moving forward. But had they not put that delay in place, my girls wouldn't have been.
Understand.
Yeah.
Eternal Pope from New York wants to know, what is key legislation that voters should be informed on?
Oh, well, right now, I think there are a couple pieces. The push around no-knock warrants and citizen review with subpoena power is important, because those speak directly to what evolves around Breonna Taylor and legislation that can help make sure those situations are accounted for. I think a bigger one too at the federal level deals with qualified immunity. Again, that's another law enforcement related one. The two big structural ones that I put in my platform, Medicare for all, universal basic income. I also fully support a Green New Deal. I think those are like broad visionary types of platforms that allow a lot of policies to happen. But if we want poverty to end, we got to invest in people and break down barriers and make sure everyone has health care. That's an economic policy as much. So I definitely encourage folks to really just start to gravitate around those. Dr. King spoke about a guaranteed annual income. So this ain't new.
Right.
So those are definitely things to follow.
Okay, last question. Jennifer Abernathy from Indianapolis writes, can you move to Indiana and run for something here? I'm going to answer for you, no.
Yeah, I'm not leaving home, but we in this fight together. We in it together, and I know that good leadership in Kentucky will benefit the country. So, we're locked arms.
I will say this. I remember when I was running to keep my seat and you were running to win the election for the 43rd District. And we went to a lot of different places, campaigned together, and talked a lot. We went to a few churches, and I remember making the remark that you seem to be very comfortable in the pulpit.
Yeah.
Now, you talked about your faith background. If you were not a politician, would I venture to say you'd be in the pulpit a little bit more?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say I'm not going to run away from it. And I've been called Reverend Booker pretty consistently. And I've had to preach to some folks in the legislature, that's for sure. I know I have a ministry, and I know part of what resonates is the fact that I lean into my faith. So, I ain't going to count it out. I've also thought I'd be an actor too. be on the big screen. Don't limit yourself, is all I'll say.
Well, I will say this. I know that many people have said a lot of different things about it. They've called you activist. They've called you, I heard someone say rabble rouser. I've heard you called a lot of different things. How do you want people to see you? Write your own story. How do you want people to see you?
I want people to see me as a Kentuckian. And it's really important for me to get that across, because when people think about Kentucky nationally, they typically don't think about people like me. We get left out, and the full story doesn't get told. And so I love the idea of being able to represent the West End, but I love it even more because I get to make it clear that that's Kentucky. Yeah, I do cause trouble. Rebel rouse, that's interesting. I won't run from that either. I'm gonna shake it up if need be. But man, I'm a dad. I'm a son. I'm a cousin, and I'm a proud Kentuckian.
I will tell you this. Let me ask you this last question. Let's say that you go back in time and you get a chance to start this all over again. What kind of advice would you give yourself in deciding to get involved with politics? And the reason why I ask that question is because I know there are a lot of kids out there that talk about politics, and especially a lot of kids that look like us that say that I want to make a difference, I want to make a change. What would you tell that person?
Do it, and don't worry about being perfect. Learn, study, absorb, but do it. Speak up and show up. And, very specifically in this race, I had been out there. I'd been doing stuff. So I was confident in myself, but this was big, and it was Mitch McConnell. And, I wanted people to give me approval before I just jumped out there because I didn't want to do it by myself. And that is probably the only thing that I would tell myself if I went back, is just go for it. We did our diligence, and I'm glad we did. And what we did was incredible. But that next person coming up, I hope that they look at what I've done and know that they can run.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. I've had a lot of people on the show already, but I will tell you this. In talking to you, I feel you. I feel like your story could be anybody else's story. I don't feel like if you're representing me, you are somebody that I couldn't be proud of. So I appreciate everything you've done for this community. I appreciate you. I'm a little bit older than you, but I appreciate the example you set for me and for my sons and other kids coming up, because you have done everything that you said you were going to do. And even after this race is over, you're still trying to do more. It wasn't about show. You've never been anything other than authentic, especially to me. So I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your website. Tell me how we get more information about you.
Absolutely. So again, this is a big day, big moment. I got to text my mom. It's like, I own a nonprofit. we don't do stuff like this. But this is really powerful, and it's Hood to the Holler. The website is hoodtotheholler.org. There is a page there now where you can donate, because we're trying to build up quickly. There were over 150,000 Kentuckians that got their rights restored through the executive order from the governor that was built on my legislation. Needs to go further. We got work to do, but I want to make sure those folks are locked in for this general election. There are organizations that are helping them register, but we got to make sure they have the tools to not only just be able to vote, but to be able to organize and advocate and know that this is for them. So if you go to hoodtotheholler.org, you can help us do that and train a new wave of leaders to transform our politics.
Charles, man, I just want to say, Representative Booker, I want to say thank you for being on the show, man. And once again, thank you for watching another episode of Matter of Perspective. Join us next week when we have another interesting guest. Thank you.